Hi people, welcome to Bouquet Jazz Dance. I'm very going to speak very briefly on the Adventures of the Swing Kid, how the Adventures of the Swing Kid came about. The Adventures of the Swing Kid is the longest project I ever created. I created. I created Adventures of the Swing Kid because I struggled with writing, I struggled with reading, and I struggled with reading from drama books. What happened in my primary school, they used to have stories where people played different characters. Well, I had a problem with reading, and I got very much, it was embarrassing for me at my school. Went through a lot of humiliation in the first 2 years, 6 till 8. I struggled reading, writing badly, and the more I struggled, the more I went into myself. Now, what happened was what actually made me feel more worse was the fact that we did an IQ test, and the IQ test wrote me off as ever being able to lead myself or ever be able to do qualifications 11 plus, which was why you went to school, primary school in the first place. People asked me what did I want to do as my profession, and I identified I wanted to be a barrister, and people just laughed. Teachers laughed, and pupils laughed at me as an individual, because I said, "Well, you're dunce. You know where you're going to get to do that." So there's a history of African diaspora people going to all Western schools and actually being debased and put down for having ambitions to do leadership positions. Do you understand? Anyway, cut long story, 6 to 9 years old, I struggled in the school. I was being embarrassed because we used to have reading out days, and I used to fail on them days. And part of that failure was I was anxious. I got anxiety attacks to do the reading because I wasn't encouraged. I knew that people were going to laugh at me while I was doing it, laugh at me before I did it, and laugh at me after I did it. That was the life I was living in my primary school. It wasn't a primary school that was very receptive to African diaspora people, especially West Indian immigrants. It wasn't a school that was supportive of people who had special education needs. Teachers ridiculed, wrote off children who had special education needs. That meant white, black, or Chinese. We didn't have Chinese, yeah, but I know about the white kids. There was special education in their schools. They were viewed as the future people going to prison. They were viewed as nobody. And if you do history about how special education needs people were treated, they were actually sent to mental health asylums. So you need to understand that. Do some work to do with Montessori, Marie Montessori, and then you'll get an understanding of what I'm saying. And to cut a long story short, what happened was I got bullied so bad I was nearly killed in the school. My parents went in and found out I got bullied, but they never got to the heart of the matter to know the true, proper story, what happened to me. But I was bullied without them knowing for 2 years, and I was too afraid to tell anybody, and that was even my brother, because I got told if I told anybody, I'll be hurt worse. I was a passive child, I went through a lot of challenges because I had dyslexia, people. So you're going to hear me talk a lot on the context of what dyslexia can do unknown. And I didn't know I had dyslexia at the age of 41, so I lived with it. Cut a long story short, as part of my rehabilitation from bullying, my mother took me to the Caribbean, to her home in Grenada. My dad helped pay for it. Both of them did, because my dad had to stay in Britain and work in Great Britain. It was Great Britain at the time. You have to understand, Britain was very racist during the time I was born, 64 to 70. And when I went 70 to 76 to primary school, it was very racist society, and the racism was in the educational system. Yeah, in the books. In my primary school, they had Sambo books that ridiculed black people. There was a lot of songs about black people. See, if you don't live in a white area, a white suburban area where middle class kids come from, you don't know the discrimination material that they have in the home, like gollywogs, Enid Blyton books. Enid Blyton spread all this discrimination information about us, the history that they have in the homes. Middle class kids have loads of resources that demean black people, and it's important that people understand that. From records to sheet music ridiculing blacks, it's historical. Okay, so the people that came to my school, many of them were middle class kids, the majority of the kids, and I'd gone to that school because my mum was a Catholic, and my dad allowed us to bring up a Catholic. He was a Protestant, my dad, from Pentecostal church, but he allowed us to bring up as a Catholic. And Catholic schools are seen to be progressive and forward thinking. There were these things, but there were horrible places for people of colour. That's what you need to stand. And what happened, they saw other cultures as inferior to them. It was important. And the education that they received was one that projecting West Indians, Africans, African Americans as inferior people. You need to understand that. So when I went to school, I got bullied. Cut long story short, I was sent to the Caribbean to rehabilitate. At home, I used to create my own plays. Me and my brother used to create our own plays all the time, constantly. Very self-expressive in the home. I had a powerful home family event, family home entertainment at home. We did a lot of things, mimicking dances. We were very talented young people. Me and my brother were very talented people in the arts. But people at home, I got to really share that more than in my primary school. And in the first 2 years, I get ready to share it in the way I wanted to, because it was a horrible place. So I used to keep silent most of the time, because people laughed in the way that I pronunciated words, because I had dyslexia unknown to myself. I went to the Caribbean and I got encouragement. First of all, I was brought to my mum's place in St. David's, Pomrose. In St. David's, Pomrose is a black community, basically. I didn't see no white people while I was there, so you need to understand that. And that was like, wow, from being in an all-white school and seeing white people everywhere to not seeing any black white people, that was like just a transformation overnight changed. In my primary school in the Caribbean, I went to primary school there, I was much encouraged. I was never laughed at by nobody because I had special education needs, because I wasn't the only person that had that. People came from all walks of life into the primary school, from suburban school, blacks, so there was middle class black kids that we saw, and boom, working class black kids I saw living side by side, looking at each other. I didn't see anybody curse anybody down or anything like that when I was there. It was very much people supported each other. That was the first thing. Cut long story short, in the school, my writing improved. I was very encouraged by teachers. I had some extra lessons. My writing improved, my reading improved. And they again had books to do with dramas where young people read out. I realised I improved and my anxiety was less. Anyway, I got asked to share with the school something that was, a hobby with them. And I said, let me share this play that I wrote, The Adventures of the Swing Kid. And I did this play, Adventures of the Swing Kid, talking about basically where I learned to dance and sing and be upbeat was from my dad and my mum. Because my dad is a very upbeat person and my mum's a very upbeat person. My dad sings and my dad dances in the house. They're very free-spirited. They don't realise the importance of them being free-spirited. They made me free-spirited. But what happened was, in my primary school, all-white primary school, that free-spiritedness was tainted, was looked down on, was seen as a defect. So basically, West Indian idiosyncrasies, I would say I didn't know them words. I talked about in my school. I never really self-expressed myself from a West Indian point of view because it was demeaned. And anything I said, when I tried to be self-expressive normally at home, my parents wouldn't be telling me, this is how you got to say a word or anything like that. That wouldn't happen. They just know I'm self-expressing myself as a child. Do you understand? But in the primary school, I used to get debased, so I kept silent. And what happened was, I was seen as a silent child. And what happened in Western society, silent children are seen as dangerous children. Do you understand? So that even made it worse. Already I was written off because of low IQ tests. Again, I was written off because I came from my parents who were unskilled. So therefore, I'm not going to have no intelligence. They're going to help me at home, which was not the case. I was viewed as a child that was nobody in the school. But I had to keep myself as somebody. And how I kept myself as somebody was through the Adventures of the Swing Kid. So I'm talking now from hindsight. I used the Swing Kid as a tool to improve my writing, improve my performance, but to help me cope with trauma. I had to escape. And the Swing Kid has been with me since the time I was in the Caribbean. I never knew when I did it, I was being courageous. I never knew when I did it, I was being brave. There's very few people can get up and write their own show, write their own make composition for their own work, do drumming, entertainment, because I was a dance entertainer. Now, where did I see that? I saw that on television. I saw the best professionals in musical entertainment. So all I did was mimic what I saw. Now, when people saw what I could do, they were shocked. Because I was like a professional from a very young age. I was very confident in doing it because I've seen it all my life. I watch musicals. I love musicals. And I remember distinctly seeing a character in a play called John Bubbles. I didn't know his name. And then in Cabin in the Sky, he sang, he danced, and he was an actor. So I said, I'm going to be like him. That's what happened. And all you do, you have fragments of seeing a black person. And what you understand, the significance in Britain. You saw a few black people on television. So when you saw one, it stayed with you. That's what people understand. And what stayed with me is the positive people I saw. The negative people don't stay with you, but you see someone doing dancing positively. It's amazing how it stays with you. You say, that person I want to be like. It's like Muhammad Ali. When you see him, people wanted to be like Muhammad Ali. When people knew about Pele in the World Cup, wanted to be like Pele. So we had a list of leaders that we wanted to be. Do you understand? So what happened was, when I came back from the Caribbean, I did the play. The teachers were shocked because they realised they had a prodigy in the school. Because I went to the piano and played. They didn't know. What happened was, they didn't know I had private lessons at home. Yeah, in piano lessons. Before I came to the school. And what happened was, one of the key things, the schools dictated what you played. I could play by ear. Do you understand? So I played a little bit. I composed it myself. I didn't write it down. I could compose it by ear and played. And they were shocked that I went to the play and did that. And then I sang and I danced. Because what I saw was musical theatre. I saw someone playing some music on the piano. Next minute the tap. Then they did a bit of drumming. I saw the different elements that were brought into musical theatre. Did some comedy and jokes. I pretend to be Charlie Chaplin. Because I loved Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd. I loved all these characters and I played all these characters. So people were shocked how I put these pieces together. But the irony of that was, that's my gift as a person with dyslexia. You see the whole. I can't see the bits. So they were shocked when I did that. And that changed my life in primary school from that day on. Because I became a celebrity, and I became a celebrity in Grenada. But if I didn't have the courage to do that, I wouldn't have been able to change people's minds. And from I did that, I got more support now in the school to achieve some of the things that I wanted. From teachers and pupils. People tried to treat me differently. And at 88 years old, I didn't only show my courage in my abilities in performing in sort of musical theatre. I showed my abilities in sports, because I was the best sportsman, one of the best sportsmen in the whole of the school in Grenada. Footballer, didn't play football, they played football, but not like cricket. Athletics and cricket I was very good at. And I got them abilities from my parents. Not natural abilities, people. That's the most important thing I want to share with you. Because what I've always done with the character, The Adventures of the Swing Kid, I talk about I had a hard work ethic that people assume always come to me and say to me, you're a natural dancer because of my race. I'm not a natural dancer. I'm not a natural athlete. I'm not a natural nothing. I was terrible. I had a hard work ethic. And what happened was, I developed my ability to teach in education, developed my ability to teach in education, in community and in theatre. And what happened always has been, as an individual, it's been important for me as an individual to share with people, to have an integrity, responsibility, integrity, to have a certain type of integrity as a professional, when I became a professional, to share with individuals my journey. I've always shared with individuals through the Adventures of Swing Kid. I wasn't naturally talented, and a lot of people say to me, it's really through a stereotype, and we need to challenge that stereotype. I'm naturally gifted at dance, acting, music. I have natural musicality. I did not have none of these things. And one of the important things I'm trying to say to people, anybody can learn to dance if they commit themselves to it. And what happened, African diaspora people commit themselves to learning to make people laugh, to learning to act, to learning to sing, to composing music, particularly live improvisational music. It takes a lot of research. I say so as an individual who's a professional. And that my life changed a little bit over years as we approach 2020 with the Adventures of Swing Kid. At university 2005 to 9, I decided I'm going to come back as a live improvisational performer, talking about the creative thinking and the development that you have to do. You have to be physically fit. You have to have Olympian fitness to engage in live improvisational performance. And you have to really have the knowledge of science of what to do around the thinking and learning. That requires you to learn cross-cultural ways of dancing. And I did that. So I've been through what's called a rites of passage in dance, so I can talk about it. I did African dance and I became a professional dancer. I did ballet dancing. I did contemporary dance. I did stage jazz. I did ballroom. I did flamenco. I did tap. I did modern. I did contemporary genres. I learned all the social dances of my people that was ever around from 1964, the child growing up in an early learning from 64 to 70, in the 80s, the 90s, and talk about the changes and make people understand the social dances are called social dances, not studio dance. I'm not talking about studio dancing. I'm talking about social dance. I was part of the social dance development of hip hop. I was part of the social dance development of UK jazz dance, and that was an improvisational art form. And how that was done, it started in the home. And I say, you have to understand, it was not done in no dance studio. It was with us. We learnt the composition elements of the music, the jazz music that we listen to, and derivative music like R&B, doo-wop, rock and roll, swing, jazz, soul jazz, Latin jazz. We collected the music, listened to the music for hours. That's my development in sense of musicality. I bought the leading Blue Note albums. I got them, and I got them on tape. I got them on reel to reel, and I bought the original albums and read them. And then what happened to me, an unfortunate situation arose. I had a dance lab in Bedford. I went there to study from 89 to 91. The lab was robbed. All my records, everything I had was taken. Records, my Blue Note records, my books, my videos on the history. I had videos showing me films, yeah, in America. Do you understand? And parts of different parts of the world, because I came an amazing networker. And what happened? Underground places, for the way I dress, I could go anywhere in Europe and people invite me to vintage events. Could have saw my clothes and say, you're into vintage, aren't you? Do you know about this vintage party? That's what happened when I went to the underground in Germany, went to underground in Spain. I always got introduced. I always found out where the underground dancing takes place. And it's amazing how underground dancers support and help each other. Anyway, Blue K Jazz Dance, I was just giving people an insight into the adventures of Swing Kid. I want to leave in this note. I lived in a society, Britain, from 1965, Great Britain, to 2020. What do I have to say? There's goods and there's bads. There's strengths, there's weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. What are the threats are simply this. One of the experiences I've had, the weaknesses and threats of me being in education, I experienced abuse. I experienced discrimination in primary, secondary, college and university because the stereotypes that exist about us. We have to understand the key books, 99.9% of the books that still used in education still stereotype West Indians. And most importantly, they're not actually in there. Their history is not in it. African American history is not in it. We contribute to every war that there is near enough, and we've been written out. What happened? We've been made to believe that we are not we're not courageous. We're not individuals that were in the RAF. We were not in the army. We were in the Navy. We were as in people of established leadership positions. And as an individual, I, like other individuals, use my art, and my responsibility in sense of integrity to my art is to share with people the stories, how I came to be a leader. That leadership came from discrimination, came from undiagnosed dyslexia, which should have been diagnosed at some point in the time I'd gone to college. Even when I went to higher education college to study dance, they didn't do no diagnosis on me as a person with dyslexia. That didn't come to 2005 as I got a place at universities when I discovered that I had that. And it was important I discovered it because dyslexia affects your health. Special education needs affects your health. It affects how you see yourself. If you've got low self-esteem, that's not good for your health. If you've got a low self-concept of yourself, it doesn't affect your health. What improved my low self-esteem and my self-confidence was the fact I was into jazz. Because jazz asked me to push the boundaries of my self-expression and creativity. And from me studying it, my confidence built up because I learned about people who learned to read from the slums. I learned about slaves that learned to read themselves from bits of papers, how they had the tenacity, had the resilience to bounce back. Yeah, they showed adversity, used their resilience to fight adversity, and that's part of my story for the Adventures of Swing Kid. And I talk about what does jazz mean to me. It means struggle to success. And what happened, remember in the hindsight of jazz, my story can help other people if you know how I came from struggle to success. My parents taught me to have self-belief in who I was from a very young age. It doesn't matter if you've got qualifications or not. It's what you think about yourself, and they're shown that if you have a high level of self-confidence, you will learn because you'll learn solutions. Now the irony of my situation is this. My father was dyslexic and he showed me his practice of how he learned. My mum had special education needs. She showed me her practice, and that practice was a cultural creative one. They both experimented in different ways to learn, and they passed that on to me. I'm a brother and sister, but it was most important for me as a person who was dyslexic because what happened was I needed to experiment with different ways, and to show you that people with dyslexia, their success comes from the failures that they go through. Remember, failure helps you to learn. What they do, they get up with resilience, saying, right, okay, I didn't learn. How can I learn a new way? But what's important is not that they just do that today. It's important that they have to know their health. How it affects their health is where I come from. And the irony of that was what helped me to survive and cope as a person with dyslexia for 41 years is because I directed my research into the arts and health, dance and health, and I used the dance and health for myself. Do you understand? I didn't just talk about it. I used it in everyday life, and I drew from examples to share with others. So recently I had sepsis. I came back from it. Recently I had carbon monoxide poisoning. I came back from it. I lost the ability to be coherent. How did I know I could make myself come back? How did I know I could bring my coherency back? Because I had incoherency during my early years. I had incoherency when I got hit by a bouncer. For a few weeks, I wasn't the same because I got hit in my head. Now, the irony of that story was I was training to be a b-boy, and if I wasn't trained to be a b-boy, I probably would have been dead from the hit, from the hit I got from his fist in my head. But because I trained myself to push the boundaries of my learning, training, and development as a dancer, I said, right, I've done UK jazz dance, I need to mix it with hip-hop now, etc. I want to become a b-boy as well. That thinking, that value which comes from jazz, and with that value which comes from spirituality, first, spirituality says, seek to what? Seek to develop, to be abundant in your learning, training, development first. That value just came into the father of jazz. That value came into the mother of jazz. That value came into the bebop musicians, whose value was passed on to the modern jazz musicians. And that modern jazz musician, today's value, what is it? To push the boundaries of our learning, development, training. By what? Today, being more improvisational, by being more productive, by being more what? Spontaneous. But doing so in a holistic fashion. And what happens is I did that as an individual. I didn't just push myself. As an individual, I looked before I leapt as a dancer. Always doing the Adventures of Swing Kid was like a reflection. I used to reflect on my development as a swing kid. Do you understand? This is where I'm at. Boom, boom, boom. 0 to 6 years, 6 to 8 years, 8 to 11, 11 to 16, 16 to 21, 21 to 26, 26 to 32, 32 to 36, 41, 41 to 45 was the most important time because I went to university to analyze my leadership as a person who promoted the Adventures of Swing Kid, because I knew what I did with the Adventures of Swing Kid can be something that can be shaped as a model for other people's learning, because I self-taught myself to develop my self-leadership, and that self-leadership was not done by myself. I read books, but I went out and found coaches. And many of them coaches were individuals that came from a self-leadership background. Many of them coaches were individuals that were coached by other leaders, self-leaders, and some of them had come from an educational perspective. They had become professors, they got masters, they got degrees, they got H&D, because I wanted to go back into education, so I needed their knowledge. How did you do this? How did you do that? How can I get in? Some of them came from master drummers, master craftsmen. Blue K Jazz Dance out. Take it easy.